Look at the cripple trying to reach his locker. The voice cut through the hallway like a blade. Marcus Wellington froze mid-step, his hand still on the school's front door. "Please, just leave me alone," came a smaller voice, David's voice. Marcus's stomach dropped. He pushed through the door and turned the corner into the main hallway of Jefferson Middle School. What he saw made his blood run cold. 5 boys, maybe 6, formed a tight circle around David's wheelchair. The tallest one, a kid with a buzz cut, had pushed the wheelchair against the wall. David's backpack lay torn open on the floor, textbooks scattered like trash. "Oh, he wants us to leave him alone." Buzzcut boy mimicked David's voice, making it high and whiny. The others laughed. "What are you gonna do about it? Roll over my foot." David's hands gripped the armrests of his wheelchair. His knuckles were white. "Just give me my books back." "These books." Another boy kicked David's math textbook. It slid across the polished floor. "Oops, Butterfingers." Marcus felt his legs move, but they were too slow, too heavy. His mind screamed at him to run, to shout, to do something, anything, but his body wouldn't obey. "Hey, bet he can't even feel this." A third boy reached out and tapped David's leg. Hard, then harder. "Stop it," David's voice cracked. "Or what, you gonna stand up and fight me?" Buzzcut leaned down his face, inches from David's. "Oh, wait, you can't." The group erupted in laughter. Someone made exaggerated limping motions. Another pretended to fall out of an invisible wheelchair. Marcus stood 20 feet away. 20 feet. He could see his son's face turning red. Could see David's jaw trembling as he fought back tears. Could see his boy, his 12-year-old boy, shrinking into himself. "Move, move, move." But Marcus's feet stayed planted. His throat closed up. This was his son, his blood, his responsibility. And he stood there like a statue while strangers tortured him. Then, like a lightning bolt, a small figure burst into the circle. "Back off now!" A black girl no bigger than David shoved herself between the wheelchair and Buzzcut. She couldn't have been more than 13, wearing a faded purple hoodie and jeans with holes in the knees. But she stood there like she owned the world. "Who the hell are you?" Buzzcut straightened up, surprised. "Someone who's sick of watching you act like trash." The girl's voice didn't waver. "You think you're tough picking on someone in a wheelchair? That's the most pathetic thing I've ever seen." "Mind your business, little girl." Buzzcut stepped toward her. She didn't move. "This is my business. And if you don't step back right now, everyone in this school's gonna know you're too scared to pick on someone who can actually fight back." Marcus watched, paralyzed. This child, this stranger, was doing what he couldn't. What he should have done the second he walked through that door. "You don't want to mess with me," Buzzcut warned. The girl crossed her arms. "I'm not messing with you. I'm standing up to you. There's a difference. Now pick up those books, all of them, and put them back in his bag. Make me. I don't have to make you. You're going to do it yourself. Because deep down, you know what you're doing is wrong. You know it. That's why you only do it when there's a group of you need backup to feel brave." Buzzcut's face reddened. His friends shifted uncomfortably. "What's your name, little hero?" he sneered. "Jasmine Carter. Remember it." She turned to the others. "Any of y'all got something to say? Or are you just going to stand there and watch him make fools of all of you?" One boy bent down, picked up a textbook, then another. "What are you doing?" Buzzcut spun around. "Man, forget this. I'm not trying to get suspended." The boy placed the books on David's lap. "Sorry." The others followed. One by one, they gathered the scattered books and papers. Buzzcut stood alone. "You're all weak." "No." Jasmine stepped closer to him. "We're done. That's different. Now move." He glared at her, then at David. Then with a muttered curse, he stormed off down the hallway. His friends scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Jasmine turned to David. Her whole demeanor changed, softened. "You okay? They hurt you?" David stared at her like she'd just appeared out of thin air. I'm fine. Thank you. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did. Nobody deserves that, especially not for something they can't control." She straightened David's backpack on his lap. "You good to get to class?" David nodded, but his eyes kept darting to Jasmine, then to the empty hallway where the boys had disappeared. "What if they come back? Then I'll deal with it again. But I don't think they will. Bullies are cowards. They fold when someone stands up to them." She smiled. "My mom taught me that." Marcus finally found his legs. He walked toward them on autopilot, his heart hammering against his ribs. Each step felt like moving through concrete. When he reached them, Jasmine looked up. "Can I help you, sir?" Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out at first. He looked at David. His son's expression was impossible to read. Relief. Shame, gratitude, all of it mixed together. I'm David's father. The words felt foreign, hollow. Jasmine's eyes widened slightly. Oh, I wanted to thank you. Marcus's voice sounded distant, even to himself. For what you just did. That was incredibly brave. You don't need to thank me, sir. It was the right thing to do. She shrugged like she'd just helped someone pick up dropped groceries, not face down a group of bullies twice her size. What's your name? Marcus asked, though he already knew. He'd heard her say it. Jasmine Carter. I'm in 8th grade. Marcus nodded. He wanted to say more, to explain, to apologize, to do something, but the words tangled in his throat. He looked at David again. His son's eyes met his. And in that moment, Marcus saw something that cut deeper than any insult those boys had thrown: disappointment, confusion, a question David would never ask out loud. Where were you, Dad? We should get going, David. Marcus's hands trembled as he reached for the wheelchair handles. I can push myself, Dad. David's voice was quiet, controlled. Right, of course. Jasmine stepped back. Take care, David. See you around. As David rolled toward the exit, Marcus stood there for another moment, watching Jasmine walk away down the hallway, a 13-year-old girl in a faded hoodie. She didn't look back. Marcus had built a tech empire worth billions. He'd negotiated with senators, closed deals with Fortune 500 CEOs, given keynote speeches to thousands. He had power, resources, influence. But today, a child with nothing had done what he, with everything, could not. The car ride home was suffocating. Marcus gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He wanted to say something, anything, but every word that formed in his mind felt wrong, inadequate, empty. David sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, silent. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the occasional turn signal clicking. Marcus cleared his throat. David, It's fine, Dad. It's not fine. What happened back there? I said it's fine. David's voice was flat, dead. Can we just not talk about it? Marcus's jaw tightened. He signaled to merge onto the highway. Those boys. How long has this been going on? Silence. David, answer me. How long? Does it matter? David turned to look at him. His eyes were red-rimmed but dry. It's over now. Jasmine handled it. We can all move on. The words stung more than Marcus expected. I want to help. I'm your father. I should have what? David's voice rose slightly. Then he caught himself pulled back. Never mind. Forget it. No. Say it. Please. David shook his head and turned back to the window. I don't want to do this right now. They drove in silence for another mile. 2 miles. The tension in the car was thick enough to choke on. Then quietly, almost a whisper. I didn't want you to know. Marcus nearly swerved into the next lane. What? I didn't want you to know about the bullying. David's voice was small now, childlike. I didn't want you to have to deal with it. Deal with it, David. You're my son. Of course Would you? David turned to him again. This time there was something raw in his eyes, something that had been building for years. When have you ever dealt with anything I needed? Marcus felt like he'd been slapped. That's not fair, isn't it? David's hands clenched in his lap. When I was 8, I asked you to come to my science fair. You had a meeting. When I was 9, I wanted to show you my Lego city. You were on a call. When I was 10, David, when I was 10, I fell off my bike practicing without training wheels because I wanted to surprise you. You know what you said when Mom told you, that's great, champ. We'll celebrate this weekend. David's voice cracked. But that weekend you flew to San Francisco for a conference. Marcus's throat tightened. He remembered that bike, blue with silver streamers. He'd bought it for David's birthday, then barely saw him ride it. And then the accident happened. David's voice went quiet again. The car crash. When I woke up in the hospital and couldn't feel my legs, you know what I thought. Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I thought maybe now Dad will stay home. Maybe now he'll have to pay attention to me. A bitter laugh escaped David's lips. But you didn't. You hired Rebecca to take care of me. You said you needed to work more to pay for my medical bills, for the special equipment, for everything I'd need. That's what you told Mom. I did need to. I didn't need money, Dad. David's voice broke completely now. I needed you. I needed my father to sit with me when I cried at night because I couldn't walk anymore. I needed you to help me learn how to use the wheelchair. I needed you to tell me I was going to be okay. Tears streamed down David's face. He wiped them away, angrily frustrated at himself for crying. But you weren't there. Rebecca was nice, she did her job, but she wasn't you. And every day you came home late, every dinner you missed, every weekend you spent on your laptop. I got the message loud and clear. What message? Marcus's own voice was shaking now. That I was a problem to be solved, not a son to be loved. David turned back to the window. So I stopped telling you things, stopped asking you for help, stopped expecting anything. It was easier that way. Marcus pulled the car into their driveway and put it in park. His hands were trembling. David, I never meant— I know you didn't mean it. David's voice was exhausted now. All the anger had drained out, leaving only sadness. That's the worst part. You didn't do it on purpose. You just forgot about me, little by little, until I was just another thing on your to-do list. Marcus sat there, engine off, unable to move. His mind raced backward through the years. David's first day of middle school, Marcus had been in Tokyo. David's 11th birthday, Marcus had called in from the car between meetings. The day David learned to transfer from wheelchair to bed by himself, Marcus didn't even know it had happened until Rebecca mentioned it in passing. How many moments had he missed? How many times had his son needed him, and he'd chosen a board meeting instead, a conference call, an email that could have waited? The bullying started last year, David said quietly, after we came back from winter break. Some kid asked why I was in a wheelchair. I explained about the accident. By the end of the week, they'd given me a nickname, Crash. Then it got worse. They'd move my wheelchair when I wasn't looking, hide my books, trip kids near me, and blame it on my chair being in the way. Marcus listened, horror growing with every word. I thought about telling you. Every single day I thought about it. David's fingers twisted together in his lap. But then I'd remember you were busy. You had that merger, then that lawsuit, then that new product launch. There was always something more important, and I didn't want to be another burden. You were never a burden. Then what was I, Dad? David looked at him, and Marcus saw his son clearly for the first time in years, saw the loneliness, the resignation, the child who'd learned to survive without a father, even though his father was right there. Because I know what I felt like. I felt like the broken thing you had to work around, the mistake that cost too much, the son you loved but didn't have time for. The words hit Marcus like bullets, each one finding its mark, each one true. Today, when those boys were pushing me around, I saw you standing there. David's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I saw you freeze. And you know what I felt? Not anger, not even disappointment. I felt nothing, because I realized I stopped expecting you to save me a long time ago. Marcus's vision blurred. His chest felt like it was caving in. David, I'm so sorry. I know, Dad. David reached for the door handle, but sorry doesn't change the past 3 years. Sorry doesn't give me back the father I used to have, the one who would read to me before bed, who taught me to throw a baseball, who called me his little champion. David opened the door. That dad died in the same accident that took my legs, and I've been mourning both losses ever since. He pulled his wheelchair from the back seat with practiced efficiency. Marcus moved to help, but David waved him off. I've got it. I've had to get good at doing things alone. Marcus sat in the car watching his son wheel himself up the ramp to their front door. David didn't look back, and Marcus finally understood his son had been suffering for years, not just from the accident, not just from the bullies, but from the absence of the one person who should have been there through it all. The one person who'd failed him completely. Him. Marcus sat in his home office at 3:17 a.m., staring at his computer screen. He hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. The house was silent except for the hum of his laptop and the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. Emily, his ex-wife, had taken the guest room downstairs years ago. They were divorced in all but paperwork. She'd given up on him long before David had. His phone buzzed, another email from his VP of Operations. Marcus ignored it. Instead, he opened his photo library. The first image that appeared was from last week, David at the dinner table, barely visible in the background, while Marcus took a selfie with some tech investor. David's face was turned away. Marcus scrolled backward, further. David's 12th birthday. Marcus wasn't in a single photo. He'd been in New York that day. David's 6th grade graduation. Marcus had shown up for the last 10 minutes, missed David's name being called. The hospital right after the accident. Marcus stood stiffly beside David's bed, checking his phone while his son slept hooked up to machines. Marcus's hand trembled on the mouse. He kept scrolling. David's 10th birthday there. Finally a photo of them together. David grinning gap-toothed, holding up a remote control car. Marcus's arm around him, but his eyes were distant. Distracted. Probably thinking about work even then. 9th birthday. 8th. 7th. The further back he went, the more photos there were. David and Marcus building sandcastles at the beach. David on Marcus's shoulders at a basketball game. David asleep on Marcus's chest during a movie night, both of them covered in popcorn crumbs. When had it stopped? When had he stopped being present? Marcus closed the photo app and opened a new browser tab. His fingers moved automatically. Bullying effects on children with disabilities. The results loaded. Article after article, studies, statistics. Words jumped out at him: twice as likely to experience severe bullying. Higher rates of depression and anxiety. Long-term psychological trauma. Many suffer in silence, afraid to burden parents. That last one made him stop breathing. Afraid to burden parents. I didn't want to be another burden. David's words echoed in his head. Marcus opened another tab, then another. He read about PTSD in bullied children, about the suicide rates, about the lifelong damage done when kids feel abandoned by the people who should protect them. His son had been drowning, and Marcus had been too busy checking his stock portfolio to notice. Marcus had billions of dollars. He could buy David the best wheelchair, the best medical care, the best education. He could hire an army of lawyers to sue the school, the kids' parents, anyone who'd wronged his son. But he couldn't do the one thing David actually needed: be there. A 13-year-old girl with nothing had given David something Marcus, with all his wealth and power, had failed to provide for years: protection, dignity, someone who cared enough to act. Marcus's eyes burned. When was the last time he'd cried at his father's funeral? Maybe 20 years ago. He clicked back to his photo library, found the most recent photo of Jasmine from the school's website, a class photo from last year. She was smiling, but it was a guarded smile. The smile of a kid who'd learned early that life was hard and you had to be harder. What kind of life did she have? What kind of mother raised a child brave enough to stand against injustice without a second thought? Marcus thought about his own parenting. He'd given David everything money could buy: private tutors, the latest technology, a trust fund that would keep him comfortable for life. But Jasmine's mother had given her something more valuable: a moral compass, a spine. The understanding that wealth and power meant nothing if you didn't use them to help people who needed it. Marcus had failed that test spectacularly. His phone buzzed again. Another email, then another. His assistant reminding him about tomorrow's board meeting. His CFO needing approval on a merger. His PR team wanting a quote for some press release. The empire demanded his attention. It always did. That's what he'd told himself for years. He was building something important, creating jobs, innovating, changing the world. But what good was changing the world if he'd destroyed his own son? In the process, Marcus opened a new document, started typing things I've missed. David's science fair, age 8, first day of middle school, learning to use wheelchair independently, physical therapy sessions, parent-teacher conferences, all of them. 3 years of bullying. His fingers froze over the keyboard. 3 years. David had suffered for 3 years, and Marcus had no idea. He kept typing. David's loneliness, David's pain, David's childhood. Marcus's vision blurred. He blinked hard, but the tears came anyway. They rolled down his face, and he didn't bother wiping them away. He pulled up another search: Jasmine Carter, Atlanta student. A few school honor rolls appeared. A track meet result from 2 years ago. Nothing substantial, just glimpses of a normal kid living a normal life. But normal wasn't the right word. That girl was extraordinary, and Marcus needed to understand how. Needed to understand what made her brave when he'd been paralyzed with fear. What kind of family raised a child like that? What values were taught in a home that produced someone willing to stand against injustice without hesitation? His empire suddenly felt hollow. All those achievements, all that success. What did any of it matter when he couldn't even protect his own child? The clock on his computer read 4:43 a.m. Dawn was still an hour away. Marcus closed his laptop and sat in the darkness. For the first time in years, maybe ever, he had perfect clarity. He'd spent his entire adult life building the wrong thing. He'd constructed a fortress of wealth and influence while his son crumbled inside it. But Jasmine Carter had shown him something in 30 seconds that he'd been too blind to see. Courage didn't come from power or money. It came from knowing who you were and what you stood for. It came from showing up when it mattered regardless of the cost. Marcus had to find out more about her family, Had to understand how people with so little could have everything that mattered. Had to learn how to be the father David deserved, not the one who threw money at problems, but the one who showed up, who stood up, who protected his son with his presence, not his checkbook. And he had to change, not just for David, but for himself. Because if he didn't, if he kept being the ghost of a father he'd become, he'd lose his son completely. He might have already lost him, but Marcus refused to accept that. Not yet. The first rays of sunlight crept through the blinds. A new day. Maybe a chance to start over. Marcus stood up, his body stiff from sitting all night. He had work to do, but not the kind his company needed, the kind his son needed, the kind he needed. He walked to David's room and stopped outside the door. He could hear soft breathing inside. David was asleep. Marcus pressed his hand against the door. "I'm going to fix this," he whispered. "I don't know how yet, but I will. I promise." The door stayed closed, but the promise had been made. Now he just had to figure out how to keep it. He'd spent his entire adult life building the wrong thing. He'd constructed a fortress of wealth and influence while his son crumbled inside it. But Jasmine Carter had shown him something in 30 seconds that he'd been too blind to see. Courage didn't come from power or money. It came from knowing who you were and what you stood for. It came from showing up when it mattered, regardless of the cost. Marcus had to find them. Had to understand how a family with nothing had everything that mattered. Had to learn how to be the father David deserved, not the one who threw money at problems, but the one who showed up, who stood up, who protected his son with his presence, not his checkbook. And he had to change. Not just for David, but for himself. Because if he didn't, if he kept being the ghost of a father he'd become, he'd lose his son completely. He might have already lost him, but Marcus refused to accept that. Not yet. The first rays of sunlight crept through the blinds. A new day. Maybe a chance to start over. Marcus stood up, his body stiff from sitting all night. He had work to do, but not the kind his company needed, the kind his son needed, the kind he needed. He walked to David's room and stopped outside the door. He could hear soft breathing inside. David was asleep. Marcus pressed his hand against the door. "I'm going to fix this," he whispered. "I don't know how yet, but I will. I promise." Morning light filled the kitchen. Marcus sat across from David at breakfast, pushing scrambled eggs around his plate. Neither of them had spoken since David came downstairs. Finally, Marcus broke the silence. "David, I need to ask you something." David looked up, guarded. "What?" "Jasmine, the girl who helped you yesterday." Marcus set down his fork. "Do you know where she lives?" David's expression shifted, confusion mixed with something else. Worry, maybe. "Why, I want to thank her properly. Talk to her family." Marcus paused. "I need to understand how someone so young can be so brave." David stared at his orange juice. "Dad, her house. It's not like ours." "What do you mean?" "I mean," David's fingers tightened around his glass. "She lives in South Atlanta, the poor part. Her mom works night shifts at the hospital. Jasmine told me once that they can barely afford rent." He looked up at Marcus. "If you go there trying to throw money at them or make some big gesture, you'll just make things weird. She doesn't want charity." Marcus absorbed this. "I'm not trying to." "Aren't you?" David's voice was sharp. "That's what you do, Dad. You solve problems with money because it's easier than actually dealing with people." The words stung because they were true. "Maybe I have, but I want to learn to do better. Please, just give me the address." David watched him for a long moment. Then reluctantly, he pulled out his phone and texted Marcus the location. "Don't embarrass her, Dad. She's the only friend I have at that school." Marcus's chest tightened. "The only friend." "I won't. I promise." 2 hours later, Marcus pulled his Tesla into a neighborhood that looked nothing like his gated community in Buckhead, South Atlanta. Cracked sidewalks, chain-link fences, houses with peeling paint and sagging porches. Kids played basketball in the street, moving aside reluctantly as his car passed. They stared. A few pointed. Marcus felt their eyes on him. Felt like an intruder. He probably was. He found the address David had given him, a small house with faded yellow siding. The paint was chipped and peeling in several places. The front porch tilted slightly to one side. A rusted chain-link fence surrounded a tiny yard where a few determined flowers somehow managed to bloom in cracked plastic pots. But the yard was clean. The small porch was swept. Someone cared for this place even if they didn't have the means to fix it up. Marcus parked and sat for a moment, suddenly unsure. What was he doing here? What was he going to say? He got out and walked to the front gate. It squeaked when he opened it. Before he reached the porch, the front door opened. A woman stood in the doorway, early 40s, in nurse's scrubs, her hair pulled back in a tired bun. Her eyes were sharp, assessing. "Can I help you?" Her tone was polite but wary. She'd probably learned to be cautious about strangers showing up unannounced. "Mrs. Carter, Sharon Carter." "Who's asking?" She didn't move from the doorway. "My name is Marcus Wellington. I'm David's father, the boy your daughter helped yesterday at school." Recognition flickered across her face, followed quickly by concern. "Is Jasmine in some kind of trouble?" No, nothing like that." Marcus held up his hands. I wanted to thank her, and you, for raising someone with so much courage." Sharon's posture relaxed slightly, but her eyes remained cautious. "You didn't need to come all the way here for that." "I know, but I wanted to." Marcus glanced at the house, then back at her. "May I speak with you just for a few minutes?" Sharon studied him. Marcus could see her weighing the decision, this wealthy stranger showing up at her door. It probably seemed strange, possibly suspicious. "Please," Marcus added. "I'm not here to cause problems. I just need to understand something." After a long moment, Sharon stepped aside. 5 minutes. I have to sleep before my shift tonight." The inside of the house was small. Marcus's walk-in closet was probably bigger than the living room, but it was immaculate. A worn couch with carefully arranged throw pillows, family photos on the walls in mismatched frames, a small TV on a stand that had seen better days, books everywhere stacked on shelves piled on the coffee table lined up along the windowsill. The house was poor in money, but rich in something else, something Marcus's mansion lacked despite its marble floors and crystal chandeliers. It felt like a home. "You want some coffee?" Sharon asked, more out of politeness than genuine hospitality. "No, thank you." Marcus remained standing, feeling too large for the small space. "Mrs. Carter." "Miss Carter, never married." "Miss Carter, I watched your daughter stand up to 5 boys yesterday." "Boys twice her size." She didn't hesitate, didn't back down. "She protected my son when I—" His voice caught. "When I couldn't." Sharon's expression softened slightly. She sat on the arm of the couch, exhaustion evident in every line of her face. "Jasmine's always been like that, since she was little. Can't stand to see anyone get hurt." "How did you teach her that kind of courage?" Sharon laughed, but it was a tired sound. "You think I taught her courage, Mr. Wellington? I taught her survival. Courage is what she made of it." "I don't understand." "We live in this neighborhood. You saw it driving in." Sharon gestured toward the window. "It's not safe. Never has been. When Jasmine was 6, she saw a boy get jumped by a gang 2 blocks from here. When she was 8, there was a shooting at the corner store. She's grown up watching people look the other way because it's easier, safer." Sharon stood and walked to a photo on the wall. Young Jasmine, maybe 7 or 8, grinning with a missing front tooth. "I told her, baby, you can't fix the whole world, but you can fix your corner of it. And if everyone fixed their corner, maybe the whole world would get better." Marcus felt something crack in his chest. "I also told her," Sharon continued, "that seeing wrong and doing nothing makes you part of the wrong. That scared silence is just another form of violence." She turned to face Marcus. "Is that what you wanted to hear? My parenting philosophy? I wanted to understand how you raised someone so much braver than me." Sharon's eyebrows rose. "You froze yesterday, didn't you, when those boys were hurting your son?" Marcus nodded, shame burning in his throat. "And now you're here trying to figure out why a broke single mother's kid is braver than a billionaire." Sharon crossed her arms. "Want to know the truth?" "Yes. Jasmine has nothing to lose." "You have everything." Sharon's voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel. "When you have power, you spend all your time afraid of losing it. When you have nothing, you're free to do what's right, because nothing is all you're risking anyway." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. The front gate squeaked, footsteps on the porch. The door opened, and Jasmine walked in, backpack slung over one shoulder. She froze when she saw Marcus. "Mr. Wellington, what are you doing here? Is David okay?" "He's fine," Marcus said quickly. "I came to see you, to thank you properly." Jasmine glanced at her mother, confused. "Mom." "He wanted to talk," Sharon said. "About yesterday." Jasmine set down her backpack. "You really didn't need to come all the way here, Mr. Wellington. I just did what anyone should do." "But most people don't." "I didn't." Jasmine shifted uncomfortably. "You were probably in shock. It's different when it's your kid." "No." Marcus shook his head. "You don't understand. I should have been the first one there. The fastest, the loudest. Instead, I stood there like a statue while a 13-year-old girl did my job for me. It's not a job to stand up for people, Jasmine said quietly. It's just what you do when you see something wrong. Your mother told me what she taught you, about seeing wrong and staying silent. Yeah, Jasmine nodded. Mom says that if you see someone getting hurt and you don't help, you're hurting them too, just in a different way. Marcus looked at Sharon. You taught her that. I taught her the truth. Sharon's voice was firm. This world has enough people looking the other way. Enough people who can't be bothered. Enough people who say, not my problem. I wasn't going to raise another one. Marcus felt tears threatening again. He blinked them back. Jasmine, can I ask you something? Sure. Weren't you scared those boys could have hurt you? Jasmine was quiet for a moment. Then she shrugged. Yeah, I was scared. My hands were shaking the whole time. I thought my heart was going to explode out of my chest. Then how? Being scared doesn't mean you don't do anything, Mr. Wellington. It means you do it anyway. Jasmine's voice was clear, certain. Mom says that being scared and doing nothing, that's just being scared. But being scared and still doing the right thing, that's courage. Marcus had to sit down. He lowered himself onto the worn couch, his legs suddenly weak. Here was a philosophy more profound than anything he'd learned in business school, being delivered by a 13-year-old in a house held together with determination and love. I have billions of dollars, Marcus said almost to himself. I can buy almost anything, solve almost any problem, but I can't buy what you have. I can't buy the ability to act when it matters, to stand up when everyone else stands back. That's because it's not for sale, Sharon said softly. You can't buy character, Mr. Wellington. You have to build it, day by day, choice by choice. Jasmine sat down next to her mother. Is David really okay? He seemed pretty shaken up yesterday. Physically, yes. Emotionally, Marcus rubbed his face. I think I've failed him in ways I'm only beginning to understand. It's not too late, Jasmine said. You're here, aren't you? That's a start. I want to do something, Marcus said. For you, for your family. Let me... No. Sharon's voice was sharp. We don't need your money, Mr. Wellington. We're poor, but we're not broken. We manage. I wasn't offering charity. I was... What then? Sharon stood up. A reward for my daughter doing what any decent person should do? That's not how this works. You don't pay people for having a conscience. Marcus felt the walls closing in. He'd come here wanting to help, to give back, to do something that mattered, but he'd approached it all wrong. Again. You're right, he said quietly. I'm sorry. I keep trying to solve problems with money because it's the only language I'm fluent in anymore. Jasmine looked at her mother, then back at Marcus. Mr. Wellington, if you really want to do something, don't do it for me. Do it for David. Be there for your son. That's what he needs. Not money. Not stuff. Just you. The simple truth of it broke something in Marcus. This child, this brave, wise, impossible child, had just given him the answer he'd been searching for all night. You're absolutely right, Marcus said, his voice thick. Both of you are right. I came here thinking I could learn some secret, some trick to being brave or being a better father. He stood up. But there is no trick, is there? It's just about showing up, being present, doing what's right even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, Sharon corrected. That's when it matters most. Marcus moved toward the door, then paused. Jasmine, thank you for protecting my son, for showing me what courage looks like. I don't know if I'll ever be as brave as you, but I'm going to try. Jasmine smiled, that same guarded smile from the school photo, but warmer now. Just love your kid, Mr. Wellington. That's brave enough. As Marcus walked back to his car, the neighborhood kids still playing basketball in the street, he felt fundamentally changed. He'd driven here expecting to be the teacher, the benefactor, the one with all the answers. Instead, a tired nurse and her teenage daughter had taught him more in 20 minutes than he'd learned in 20 years of success. The gate squeaked as he closed it behind him. He looked back at the small yellow house with its tilted porch and determined flowers, poor in money, rich in everything else. Marcus got in his car and sat there for a moment, engine off. He had no idea how to be the father David needed, no idea how to rebuild what he'd broken, no idea how to transform himself from the ghost he'd become into someone present, someone real. But he knew where to start. He started the car and drove home, not to his office, not to a meeting, home, to his son. Marcus stood in the kitchen that evening, staring at a carton of eggs like they were a complex algorithm he couldn't solve. David was in his room. Marcus could hear the faint sound of video game music through the ceiling. He'd stopped at the grocery store on the way home, his first time inside one in probably 5 years, wandered the aisles like a lost tourist trying to remember what David liked, what made his son smile. Chocolate chip pancakes. David used to beg for them every Saturday morning when he was little, before the accident, before everything fell apart. Marcus cracked an egg. It splattered everywhere, shell, and all going into the bowl. Damn it! He fished out the shells with his fingers, making an even bigger mess. This was ridiculous. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals. He'd built a company from nothing, and he couldn't make pancakes for his own son. But he kept going. Mixed the batter too lumpy, heated the pan too hot, smoke rising, poured the first pancake, it spread out like a sad, burnt amoeba. The smoke detector went off. Marcus grabbed a dish towel, waving it frantically under the alarm. The screeching stopped just as David rolled into the kitchen doorway. "Dad, what are you doing?" Marcus turned, still holding the smoking pan. Burnt pancakes stuck to the bottom like tar. "I'm making you breakfast. Well, dinner. Breakfast for dinner." David stared at the disaster on the stove, at the flour dusting Marcus's shirt, at the eggshells scattered across the counter. "You're cooking." Attempting to. Marcus scraped the burnt pancake into the trash. "I remembered you used to love chocolate chip pancakes. Thought I'd make some." "Dad, you've never cooked in your life. We have a chef." "I gave her the night off." Marcus poured another pancake, this one slightly less catastrophic. "I wanted to do this myself." David wheeled closer, watching silently as Marcus flipped the pancake too early. It folded over on itself, half raw in the middle. "Why?" David's voice was quiet. Marcus turned down the heat. "Because Jasmine was right. I need to show up. Be present. And that starts with..." He gestured helplessly at the mess. "This. Whatever this is." David's expression was unreadable. "Dad, you don't have to..." "Yes, I do." Marcus met his son's eyes. "I've missed everything, David. Every moment that mattered. I'm not going to miss any more." For the next hour, they worked together, or rather, David coached Marcus through the basics of not burning down the kitchen. Mix the batter more. Lower heat. Wait for bubbles before flipping. The pancakes gradually improved from completely inedible to almost edible. They sat at the kitchen table, not the formal dining room Marcus never used, and ate misshapen pancakes that were burnt on the edges and raw in the middle. "These are terrible," David said, chewing carefully. "I know." Marcus took another bite. "They really were awful. I'm sorry." "For the pancakes." "For everything." Marcus set down his fork. "For not being here. For not learning how to make you pancakes years ago. For hiring people to do what I should have been doing myself." David pushed a chocolate chip around his plate. "You were building a company. I was hiding behind a company." Marcus's throat tightened. "It was easier to work than to be your father. Work has clear rules, clear metrics. I knew how to succeed there. But with you, I was terrified of failing. So I just stopped trying." David's eyes glistened. "Dad, let me finish, please." Marcus reached across the table, stopping just short of David's hand. "When I saw you being bullied, I froze. Not because I didn't care, but because I realized I had no idea how to protect you anymore. I'd been absent so long I didn't know how to be your father when you needed me." "You're here now," David said quietly. "I am. And I'm going to keep being here. I'm going to learn how to make decent pancakes. I'm going to show up to your school events. I'm going to be the father you deserve, even if I'm terrible at it at first." David wiped his eyes. "You don't have to be perfect, Dad. You just have to try." Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus tried. God, how he tried. He bought David a new video game, the wrong one. David had that console 2 generations ago. He attempted to help with homework. Ended up more confused than David. He made dinner again. Burned the chicken. Undercooked the rice. Created something that might have been vegetables but looked like alien life forms. David ate it anyway. Every bite. Marcus showed up to David's physical therapy session unannounced. Sat in the waiting room like an awkward intruder until David's therapist asked if he wanted to observe. He watched his son work, stretching, straining, pushing his body through exercises that looked painful. David's face was determined, focused. Marcus had never seen this side of him. "He's doing great," the therapist said. "Strongest kid I work with." Marcus's chest swelled with pride and shame in equal measure. His son was strong, had been strong, and Marcus had missed all of it. He tried to watch a movie with David, fell asleep 20 minutes in, exhausted from actually spending time with his son instead of hiding in his office. He woke to David throwing a blanket over him. "Go to sleep, Dad. I'll wake you when it's over." But it was the birthday cake that broke him. David's 13th birthday was next week. Marcus wanted to do something special, something personal, not just hire a party planner and write a check. He decided to bake a cake. He watched YouTube videos, read recipes, bought ingredients he'd never heard of. Saturday morning, he started baking while David was at a friend's house, his first social visit in months. Jasmine had invited him over. Marcus measured flour, mixed eggs, followed the instructions exactly. The cake came out lopsided, one side higher than the other. The frosting chocolate, David's favorite, was too runny. It dripped down the sides in uneven streams. Marcus tried to fix it, made it worse. The cake looked like it was melting, dying a slow, chocolatey death. He stood there in his kitchen, his pristine professional kitchen that had probably never seen a homemade cake, and stared at his failure. This was supposed to be special, supposed to show David he cared. Instead, it looked like something you'd find in a dumpster. The front door opened. David's voice, "Dad, I'm home." Marcus panicked, tried to hide the cake, but where? It was too big, too obvious. David wheeled into the kitchen and stopped, stared at the cake, at Marcus, at the disaster covering the counter. Did you make that?" Marcus wanted to throw it away, pretend it never happened, order a perfect cake from the best bakery in Atlanta and pretend he'd made it himself. But he was done pretending. "I tried to make you a birthday cake," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "I wanted to do something myself, something that came from me, not from money, or employees, or someone else doing it for me. I wanted you to have something I made with my own hands because I love you, and I've never shown you that, and He couldn't finish. The words choked off. David wheeled closer to the cake, reached out and touched it. His finger came away, covered in runny frosting. He licked it. "It's good." "David, you don't have to." "No, Dad, it's actually good." David smiled, the first real smile Marcus had seen in years. "It's the ugliest cake I've ever seen, but it tastes good." Marcus let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "And you know what else?" David's eyes were wet now, too. "It's the first thing you've ever made for me. The first thing that's really actually from you." That did it. Marcus's careful control shattered. Tears poured down his face, and he couldn't stop them. Didn't want to stop them. He sank to his knees beside David's wheelchair and sobbed like a child. All the years of absence, all the moments missed, all the love he'd failed to show. It came pouring out in broken, ugly cries. David's hand touched his head, fingers running through his hair the way Marcus used to do when David was little. "Dad, it's okay. I'm here. You're here. That's what matters." Marcus looked up at his son. "I'm so sorry, David, for everything, for not being there, for not protecting you, for not showing you every single day how much I love you. I know, Dad. I know you love me." How could you possibly know when I've done such a terrible job of showing it?" David wiped his own eyes. "Because you're here now. Because you're trying. Because you made me the ugliest, most beautiful cake I've ever seen." Marcus stood on shaky legs, pulled David into a hug, awkward because of the wheelchair, because they were both crying, because neither of them had done this in so long. But they held on anyway. "I don't know how to be a good father," Marcus whispered into David's hair. "I don't know how to fix what I broke." "Then we'll figure it out together," David said. "One terrible pancake and one ugly cake at a time." They pulled apart. Marcus grabbed a knife and cut into the lopsided cake. It fell apart, but he managed to get 2 pieces onto plates. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where they'd eaten terrible pancakes and ate terrible cake. And it was perfect. Not the cake. The cake was objectively awful. But the moment, the presence, the trying. That was perfect. "Dad," David said after a while. "Yeah, you said you wanted to change. Not just for me, but for other kids like me." Marcus nodded. "I meant it. I just don't know how yet." David set down his fork. "I have an idea, but it's big, and it's going to take more than just money." "Tell me." David took a breath. "What if we created a place for kids like me? Kids who are different, kids who get bullied, kids who feel alone, a place where they're safe, where they matter, where they can be themselves." Marcus leaned forward. "Keep going." "And what if?" David's voice grew stronger. "What if Jasmine and I helped run it, not adults deciding what kids need, but actual kids who've lived it?" Marcus felt something ignite in his chest, not just an idea, a purpose. Yes, he said. Yes, we'll do it. Together. David's face lit up. Really? Really? You and Jasmine will lead it. I'll be there to support you, to show up, to do whatever you need. For the first time since the accident, maybe for the first time in years, David looked at Marcus with something that wasn't disappointment or resignation. It was hope. There's one more thing, David said quietly. If we're really going to do this, you need to do it for the right reasons. Not to fix your reputation, not to ease your guilt, but because it's right. I know. And people are going to doubt you. They're going to say you're doing it for publicity. They're going to think it's fake. Marcus thought about Sharon Carter's words, about Jasmine's courage, about the ugly perfect cake sitting between them. Then we'll prove them wrong, Marcus said, not with words, with action, day by day, choice by choice. David reached across the table, his hand still small despite being 12 years old, gripped Marcus's. Okay, Dad, let's do it. They sat there holding hands across a messy kitchen table, eating terrible cake and planning something that might actually matter. Marcus didn't know if he could pull it off. Didn't know if he could be the father David needed. Didn't know if he could create something meaningful instead of just throwing money at a problem. But for the first time in years, he was going to try. Not because it would make him look good, not because it would ease his guilt, but because his son asked him to, because kids like David and Jasmine deserved better, because courage meant being scared and doing it anyway. The cake was a disaster. The plan was ambitious. The future was uncertain. But they were together. Finally, truly together. And that was something money could never buy. 3 days later, Marcus stood in front of Jefferson Middle School's auditorium facing 200 parents packed into uncomfortable folding chairs. The announcement had gone out that morning. Marcus Wellington Tech Billionaire was launching a program to support students with disabilities and those from disadvantaged backgrounds. David Wellington and Jasmine Carter would serve as youth advisors. Marcus had expected questions, maybe some skepticism. He hadn't expected this. Let me get this straight. A white man in a polo shirt stood up, arms crossed. You're going to use our school as some kind of what PR experiment photo op for your company? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. That's not, Marcus started, because that's what this looks like. The man continued. Rich guy has a crisis of conscience, decides to play savior, gets some good press, tax write-off. Everyone wins, except the kids you're using as props. I'm not using anyone as. Then what are you doing? A black woman in the middle section stood up. Her voice was sharp-cutting. You show up in our neighborhood. Yes, I heard about that. You went to the Carter's house, trying to buy your way into feeling like a good person. Marcus's hands trembled. He gripped the podium. I went to thank Jasmine for helping my son. Did you? Another voice from the back. Marcus couldn't see who. Or did you go there to ease your guilt to make yourself feel better about being a terrible father? The crowd stirred. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded. That's not fair. Someone said, a younger woman near the front. Isn't it? The black woman who'd spoken before stepped into the aisle. Her name tag read Patricia Johnson. These rich people, they love to come into our communities with their solutions, their programs, their charity, but they never ask us what we actually need. They just assume money fixes everything. I'm not assuming, Marcus tried again. You are, though. Patricia's voice grew louder. You're assuming you know what's best. You're assuming your money gives you the right to decide. You're assuming that because you're rich and powerful, you can just waltz in and save us poor black folks. Is that it? You here to be our white savior, Mr. Wellington? The words hit like a slap. Marcus felt blood rush to his face. No, that's not. I'm trying to help. Help! Patricia laughed, but there was no humor in it. Where were you when the school was cutting special education funding? Where were you when kids in this district couldn't afford lunch? Where were you for the past 12 years while our children suffered? Oh, that's right. You were building your empire, but now your kid gets bullied and suddenly you care. Marcus couldn't speak. His throat had closed up completely. You want to help, Patricia continued. Write a check and go home. That's what people like you are good at. Don't pretend this is about the kids. This is about you feeling better about yourself. More voices joined in. It's all for show. He just wants good publicity, using those kids for his image. Marcus looked out at the crowd. Some faces were angry, others uncertain, a few sympathetic but silent. His eyes found Sharon Carter sitting near the back with Jasmine. Sharon's expression was unreadable. Jasmine looked uncomfortable, shrinking in her seat. Then Marcus saw them, the kids from David's school, the ones who'd been bullying him. They sat together smirking, whispering to each other. One of them, the buzz-cut kid, caught Marcus's eye and made a mocking, cry-face gesture. David was supposed to be here. Marcus had asked him to come to stand with him, but David had refused. "If you're doing this for the right reasons, Dad, you don't need me there. You'll know what to say." But Marcus didn't know what to say. Every word he'd prepared vanished. Every argument dissolved. The door at the back opened. David rolled in alone. He'd changed his mind. Their eyes met across the auditorium. David's expression was complicated. Hope mixed with fear. Belief mixed with doubt. Patricia Johnson was still talking. "And now he wants to put our children in some program he controls. Make them dependent on his generosity. What happens when he gets bored, when the press stops paying attention, when the next shiny cause comes along? Our kids are left with nothing." Again. "Miss Johnson is right," another parent said. "My daughter goes here. She's been bullied too. Where was this program last year? Why now? Why only after his kid got hurt?" Marcus felt the room closing in. The podium seemed to shrink beneath his hands. Then another voice, quieter. "What about Jasmine?" Heads turned. A teenage girl was standing one of Jasmine's classmates. Jasmine helped David. Now she's getting called a sellout. People saying she's going to be rich now, that she thinks she's better than us. "Is that what you wanted, Mr. Wellington, to turn kids against each other?" Marcus's stomach dropped. He looked at Jasmine. She was staring at her lap, her mother's arm around her shoulders. "I didn't," Marcus started. "I never meant—" "What did you mean then?" Patricia demanded. "What's your real agenda here?" The buzz-cut kid called out, "Yeah, Mr. Wellington, tell us your agenda." His friends laughed. Marcus's vision blurred. This was falling apart. Everything he'd wanted to do, everyone he'd wanted to help it, was crumbling before it even started. He thought about walking out, just leaving. These people didn't want his help, didn't trust him. Maybe they were right not to. He looked at David again. His son sat in the back of the auditorium watching, waiting. Marcus's hands shook. His mouth was dry. Every instinct screamed at him to run to protect himself, to retreat back into the safety of his office, and his money, and his controlled environment where he knew the rules. But then he remembered Jasmine's words. Being scared and doing nothing, that's just being scared. But being scared and still doing the right thing, that's courage. He was terrified, utterly, completely terrified. But David was watching. Jasmine was watching. Kids who needed help were watching. Marcus let go of the podium, stood up straight. His voice, when it came, was shaking, but clear. "You're right." The room quieted slightly. "Miss Johnson, you're absolutely right." Marcus stepped out from behind the podium. "I wasn't there when the school cut funding. I wasn't there when kids couldn't afford lunch. I wasn't there for 12 years while children in this district suffered. I was building a company. I was making money. I was absent." He walked to the edge of the stage. "And you're right that I only started caring when my son got hurt. That's the ugly truth. I ignored everyone else's pain until it landed on my doorstep, until I couldn't ignore it anymore." Patricia's arms were still crossed, but she was listening. "I did go to the Carter's house, and yes, I wanted to ease my guilt. I wanted to feel better about being a failure as a father." Marcus's voice cracked. "I watched my son get tortured by bullies, and I froze. I stood there like a coward while a 13-year-old girl did what I should have done, and it destroyed me." The room was silent now except for his voice. "But here's what I learned from Jasmine and her mother. This isn't about me. My guilt doesn't matter. My feelings don't matter. What matters is that kids are suffering. Kids like David. Kids like Jasmine. Kids in this room right now who are being bullied, who are being left behind, who are being told they don't matter." Marcus looked at the buzz-cut kid and his friends. They'd stopped smirking. "So, yes, I'm scared. I'm terrified I'll mess this up. I'm terrified I'll make things worse. I'm terrified that you're all right, that I'm just a rich guy playing savior, that I'll get bored and move on, that I'll hurt more than I help." He turned back to Patricia. "But I can't let that fear stop me from trying. Because if I do, I'm just another person who saw wrong and did nothing. And my son taught me that's not good enough." Marcus's voice grew stronger. "You want to know my agenda? I don't have one. I don't have a plan. I don't have answers. What I have is money that I earned because society gave me opportunities. And I have a son who showed me that hoarding those resources while others suffer is its own form of violence." He looked around the room. "So here's what I'm offering: resources, support. a space for kids who need it. But I'm not running it. I'm not deciding what it looks like. David and Jasmine are. Kids who've lived this pain. Kids who know what they need better than any adult, especially better than a billionaire who's been hiding from reality for 12 years. Patricia uncrossed her arms slightly. If you think I'm doing this for publicity, you're welcome to think that. If you think I'm going to fail, you're probably right. If you think I have ulterior motives, keep watching. Hold me accountable. Call me out when I screw up, and I will screw up. Marcus's hands had stopped shaking, but what I'm not going to do is let fear of criticism stop me from trying. What I'm not going to do is let your doubt, or my own, be an excuse to do nothing. He paused. Jasmine taught me something. She said courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being scared and doing the right thing anyway. Well, I'm scared, but I'm done letting that stop me. The auditorium was completely silent. Then from the back, Marcus heard it wheelchair wheels on linoleum. David rolled down the aisle toward the stage. Every eye in the room followed him. He reached the front and turned to face the crowd. His voice when he spoke was quiet but steady. My dad's telling the truth. He was a terrible father. He missed everything. He let me down more times than I can count. Marcus's heart clenched. But he's here now. David looked up at Marcus. He's trying. He made me the worst pancakes I've ever eaten. He baked me a cake that looked like it was melting. He's failing at all of it, but he's trying. David turned back to the audience. And yeah, maybe he's doing this partly for himself, to feel better, to fix his mistakes. But you know what? I don't care. Because if it helps even one kid who's being bullied, one kid who feels alone, one kid who thinks nobody cares, then it's worth it. David, someone started. I'm not done. David's voice was firmer now. My dad froze when I was getting bullied. He didn't save me. Jasmine did, and that changed everything. Not just for me, for him too. He saw what courage looks like, what standing up looks like, and he's trying to learn it. David wheeled closer to the front row. So you can doubt him. You should doubt him. But give him a chance to prove you wrong. Give us a chance to build something that actually helps. And if we fail, then call us out. But don't stop us from trying. Marcus watched his son, his brave, beautiful son, defend him to a room full of strangers. Then another voice. I believe him. Jasmine stood up. Sharon tried to pull her back down, but Jasmine stepped into the aisle. I believe Mr. Wellington, Jasmine said louder. Not because he's perfect. He's not. Not because he has all the answers. He doesn't. But because he's listening. Because he came to my house, not to throw money at us, but to understand. Because he's letting David and me help lead this, not just be faces in a brochure. She walked toward the stage. And yeah, some kids are calling me names now, saying I sold out, saying I'm trying to be better than everyone. But I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing it for kids like David who need help. For kids like me who are tired of watching people suffer and doing nothing about it. Jasmine reached the stage and stood beside David. Two kids, one in a wheelchair, one in a faded hoodie, both braver than any adult in the room. So here's what I'm asking, Jasmine said. Give us 6 months. 6 months to build something real. If it's fake, if it's just for show, if Mr. Wellington disappears, then you were right. Shut it down. But if we're real, if we're trying, if we're helping, then help us. Or at least get out of our way. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Sharon Carter stood up. My daughter's right. 6 months. We'll be watching. A few other parents nodded. Patricia Johnson stood there studying all three of them, Marcus, David, Jasmine. Then slowly she nodded. 6 months. But we're holding you accountable, all of you. That's all we're asking, Marcus said. The meeting ended without resolution. Some parents left angry, others uncertain, a few, very few, cautiously hopeful. As the room cleared, Marcus sat on the edge of the stage. David rolled up beside him. Jasmine sat on his other side, her mother standing nearby. That was brutal, Marcus said quietly. Yeah, David agreed. Think we convinced anyone? Maybe. Jasmine shrugged. Maybe not, but we tried. Marcus looked at his son. You didn't have to come. Didn't have to defend me. Yes, I did. David's jaw was set. Because you were right, Dad. Being scared and doing nothing is just being scared. We're all scared, but we're doing it anyway. Marcus put his arm around David's shoulders. His son didn't pull away. 6 months, Jasmine said. We better make it count. We will, Marcus promised. Not to the room, not to the doubters, to these two kids who decided to believe in him when he barely believed in himself. Then let's get to work. David said. They sat there for a moment, three people who shouldn't have made sense together. A billionaire who'd failed at being a father, a disabled kid who'd been bullied into silence, a poor girl who'd learned courage from hardship. But somehow, together they were going to try to build something that mattered. The doubt wasn't gone. The criticism would continue. The world was ready to watch them fail. But for the first time, Marcus wasn't running from the challenge. He was facing it head-on, with his son beside him, and a 13-year-old girl who'd taught him what courage really meant. Marcus stood slowly. His legs felt weak, but he steadied himself. David and Jasmine remained seated on the edge of the stage, but their presence gave him strength. The auditorium was half empty now. Most parents had left, some disgusted, some uncertain, some still muttering to each other as they filed out. But about 50 people remained scattered across the seats, waiting. Patricia Johnson was still there, standing in the aisle with her arms crossed. The buzz-cut kid and his friends were whispering in the back corner. Sharon Carter sat with her hand on the empty chair beside her where Jasmine had been. Marcus had no prepared speech left, no talking points, no carefully crafted message his PR team had written, just the truth. "Can I tell you something?" His voice was rough, scraped raw. "I need to tell you something." A few people sat back down. Patricia remained standing. 4 days ago, I walked into this school to pick up my son. Marcus's hands gripped the edge of the stage. I was thinking about a conference call I'd missed, about emails I needed to answer, about a deal that was falling apart in Singapore. That's what was in my head when I walked through those doors. He could see it all again. The hallway, the circle of boys, David's face. And then I turned the corner and saw my son, my 12-year-old son, surrounded by kids twice his size. They were pushing his wheelchair against the wall, throwing his books on the floor, making fun of him for something he can't control, something that already causes him pain every single day. Marcus's voice broke. He didn't try to hide it. I saw my boy trying to make himself smaller, trying to disappear, trying not to cry because he knew crying would make it worse. And you know what I did? The room was dead silent. Nothing. The word came out like a confession, like a crime. I stood there, 20 feet away. I could see everything, hear everything. My son was being tortured, and I stood there like I was watching a movie, like it wasn't real, like it wasn't happening to the one person in this world I'm supposed to protect above all others. A few parents exchanged glances. I told myself I was in shock. That's what I said to myself later. You were in shock, Marcus. Anyone would have frozen. But that's a lie. Marcus looked directly at Patricia Johnson. The truth is, I froze because I didn't know how to be his father anymore. I'd been absent so long, I'd forgotten how. When he needed me most, I had no idea what to do. Marcus stepped forward closer to the edge of the stage. And then this girl, he gestured to Jasmine, this kid who's never met my son before, who has no obligation to him, who could have walked past just like I was standing there. She ran in. She put herself between my son and those boys. She stood up to them, protected him, did what I couldn't do. Jasmine shifted uncomfortably, but Marcus kept going. I watched a 13-year-old do my job, be braver than me, be better than me, and something inside me shattered. Marcus's eyes were wet now. He didn't wipe them, because I realized my son has been suffering like this, and I didn't know. He's been alone, and I didn't know. He's been fighting battles every single day, and I didn't know because I wasn't there. Mr. Wellington, Patricia started. Please, let me finish. Marcus's voice was desperate now, raw. You asked where I've been. You asked why now. You're right to ask. The answer is ugly, but it's true I wasn't there because I was a coward, because building a company was easier than being a father, because I could measure success in dollars and deals, but I didn't know how to measure it in love and presence and showing up. He looked at David. His son's face was wet with tears. After the accident, when David couldn't walk anymore, I told myself I needed to work more, to make more money, to pay for everything he'd need. Physical therapy, equipment, the best doctors, a comfortable future. I convinced myself that was love, that providing was the same as parenting. Marcus's hands shook, but what David needed wasn't money. It was me. He needed his father to sit with him when he cried, to help him through the hardest moments of his life, to tell him he was still whole, still valuable, still loved, wheelchair or not. And I wasn't there. The words cracked. I hired people to do it for me. I threw money at the problem because money was easier than facing my own fear, easier than admitting I didn't know how to help him, easier than showing up and failing and trying again. Marcus wiped his face with his sleeve. So, yes, Miss Johnson, you're right. I'm a terrible father. I've failed in every way that matters. And this program, this idea, it started from guilt, from shame, from wanting to fix myself by fixing something else. He turned to face the remaining parents. But here's what I learned from Jasmine and her mother. My guilt doesn't matter. My shame doesn't matter. What matters is that kids are hurting right now, today, in this school and in schools across this city. Kids who feel alone, kids who are bullied, kids who think nobody cares about them. So I'm not doing this to feel better about myself. Marcus's voice grew stronger. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. And if I'm going to fail, if I'm going to keep being terrible at this, I'd rather fail while trying to help than succeed at doing nothing. Patricia's arms were no longer crossed. She was listening. You asked about my agenda. Here it is. I want to learn from my mistakes. I want David to see that even when you fail, especially when you fail, you keep trying. I want kids like Jasmine to have resources to match their courage. I want to build something where children aren't just safe, but valued, where being different isn't a target on your back. Marcus looked at the buzz-cut kid in the back. The kid looked away. And I want the bullies, the kids who hurt others because they're hurting too, to learn there's a better way. That strength isn't about making others small. That power without compassion is just cruelty with a different name. He paused, breathed. But here's the thing, I don't know how to do any of that. I don't have the answers. That's why I'm not leading this. David and Jasmine are. Kids who've lived this pain. Kids who understand it in ways I never will. How do we know you won't just disappear? A voice asked, a woman near the middle. 6 months from now when the cameras stop rolling. You don't, Marcus said simply. You don't know that. I don't even know that. All I can tell you is what I've learned from my son and from Jasmine showing up isn't a one-time thing. It's every day, every moment, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. He looked at David again. My son told me something that changed everything. He said he didn't need me to be perfect. He just needed me to try, to keep trying. Even when I fail, even when I make terrible pancakes and worse cakes and mess up over and over. A few people smiled despite themselves. So that's my promise. I'll try. I'll show up. I'll fail. And I'll keep going. And you can hold me to that. If I disappear, call me out. If I get distracted, remind me. If I start making this about me instead of the kids, shut it down. Marcus spread his hands. I'm not asking you to trust me. I haven't earned that. I'm asking you to trust them. He gestured to David and Jasmine, 2 kids who know more about courage and integrity than I've learned in 43 years. Silence filled the auditorium. Then David spoke. Can I say something? Marcus nodded. David wheeled forward. My dad's right about one thing. He was terrible. He missed everything. He abandoned me when I needed him most. And for a long time I hated him for it. Marcus's chest tightened, but he stayed silent. But you know what changed? David's voice was steady. He changed. Not perfectly. Not all at once. But he's trying. He's showing up. He's learning how to be my father again, one disaster at a time. David turned to face the audience. And if he can change, if someone as lost as my dad was can find his way back, then maybe this can work. Maybe we can help other kids who feel lost, other families that are broken. Maybe we can build something real. Then Jasmine stood, walked to the center of the stage. My mom always says, judge people by their actions, not their words. So here's what I know. Mr. Wellington came to my house, not to show off, not to make himself feel important. He came because he was lost and looking for answers. She looked at Marcus. And he listened. He didn't tell us how things should be. He didn't assume he knew better. He just listened. That's different from most rich people I've seen on TV. Jasmine turned back to the crowd. So yeah, maybe he'll mess up. Maybe he'll disappoint us. Maybe this whole thing will fall apart. But what if it doesn't? What if we actually build something that helps kids? Isn't that worth the risk? Patricia Johnson stepped forward, closer to the stage. What exactly would this program do specifically? Marcus looked at David and Jasmine. You two answer that. It's your vision. David and Jasmine exchanged a glance. Then David spoke. A safe space where kids can go after school, where they can get help with homework, with bullying, with whatever they're dealing with, where they're not judged for being different. And it's not just for kids with disabilities, Jasmine added. It's for any kid who needs it. Poor kids, kids with tough home situations, kids who don't fit in. Everyone. We'd have counselors, David continued. Not just adults, but peer counselors, kids helping kids. Because sometimes you need someone who actually gets it. And programs, Jasmine said, her voice growing excited. Like coding classes for kids with disabilities showing them they can do anything. Self-defense classes for kids who are bullied. Art therapy. Sports. Whatever helps them feel strong and valued, David nodded. But the main thing, it's run by us. By kids. Adults can help. But we decide what we need. We know better than anyone what's missing. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then, and if a kid comes in who's doing the bullying, what then? Jasmine answered immediately. We help them too. Because usually kids who hurt others are hurting themselves. They need help just as much as their victims do. Marcus watched his son and Jasmine. They'd thought about this. Really thought about it. This wasn't just some vague idea. It was a real vision. Patricia looked at them. At Marcus, back at them. 6 months, she said finally. You get 6 months to prove this is real. But we're involved. Parents, community members. We're not just handing our kids over to you. That's exactly what we want, David said. We need your help. We need the community. Sharon Carter stood up. I'm in. My daughter believes in this, so I'll give it a chance. But she looked directly at Marcus. If you hurt these kids, if you use them, if you make this about yourself, I'll shut it down myself. Understood. Understood, Marcus said. A few other parents nodded, murmured agreements. Not everyone, not even most, but enough. All right, Patricia said. 6 months, show us what you got. The remaining parents started to file out, some still doubtful, others cautiously hopeful. The buzz-cut kid and his friends left without a word, but Marcus noticed them looking back at David, not with mockery this time, with something else. Uncertainty maybe, or the first hint of shame. Soon, only Marcus, David, Jasmine, and Sharon remained in the auditorium. Marcus sat down on the stage, suddenly exhausted. That was honest, Sharon finished. That was honest. Maybe the first honest thing you've ever said publicly. Marcus nodded. It felt like standing naked in front of a firing squad. Good, Jasmine said. That's how you know it mattered. David wheeled closer to Marcus. Dad, you didn't have to say all that. About being a terrible father. About failing. Yes, I did. Marcus put his hand on David's shoulder. Because it's true. And if we're building something real, it has to start with truth, even when it's ugly. Sharon gathered her purse. Come on, Jasmine. We need to get home. Jasmine hesitated. Then she walked over to Marcus and held out her hand. Thank you. For listening. For trying. For letting us lead. Marcus shook her hand. Thank you for saving my son. And for teaching me what courage looks like. As Sharon and Jasmine left, Marcus and David sat in the empty auditorium. The afternoon light streamed through the high windows, casting long shadows across the rows of empty chairs. You think we can actually do this? David asked quietly. I don't know, Marcus admitted. Probably not. Probably we'll fail in ways we can't even imagine yet. That's encouraging, Dad. Marcus smiled. But here's what I do know we're going to try. Together. You, me, Jasmine. We're going to build something, and even if it falls apart, at least we'll have tried. At least we'll have shown up. David was quiet for a moment. Then Dad, yeah, I'm proud of you. For what you said up there. For being honest. Marcus's throat tightened. I'm proud of you too. For being brave enough to believe in me when I didn't deserve it. They sat there as the shadows grew longer. Father and son. Together. Finally truly together. Tomorrow they'd start building. Tomorrow they'd face the doubters and the critics and the inevitable obstacles. But today, in this quiet moment, Marcus allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in years, hope. Not because he knew they'd succeed, but because he knew they'd try. And sometimes trying was enough. Sometimes trying was everything. 3 months later, Marcus stood in front of a converted warehouse in South Atlanta. The building was old, probably 50 years, with brick walls stained by weather and time. Not fancy, not new, but solid. A hand-painted sign hung above the entrance, Courage Place. David rolled up beside him. It's perfect, Dad. It's a warehouse. Exactly. Jasmine appeared from around the corner, paint splattered on her jeans. It's real. Not some fancy building that makes kids feel like they don't belong. This is ours. The past 3 months had been chaos. Marcus had wanted to hire architects, designers, project managers. David and Jasmine had vetoed all of it. We're doing this ourselves, David had insisted, with help from the community. Not people you pay. People who care. So they did. Parents painted walls. Local contractors volunteered time. Kids from the neighborhood helped clean and organize. The warehouse transformed slowly, imperfectly, but with love. Now, on opening day, Marcus looked at what they'd built. The main space was open high ceilings, exposed brick, comfortable couches donated by families. One corner had computers for homework and coding classes. Another had art supplies scattered across tables. A small gym area with adaptive equipment for kids with disabilities. Bookshelves overflowing with donated books. It wasn't sleek, wasn't polished, but it was warm. Alive. "They're starting to arrive," Jasmine said, pointing to the street. Kids trickled in. Some Marcus recognized from Jefferson Middle School. Others he'd never seen. A girl in leg braces. A boy with thick glasses who walked with a cane. Two kids arguing in Spanish. A teen with a shaved head and tattoos who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. David and Jasmine greeted each one, not as authority figures, as equals, as friends. Marcus stayed back, watched. This wasn't his moment. It was theirs. "Mr. Wellington," a voice behind him. He turned. Patricia Johnson stood there, her expression neutral. "Miss Johnson, I'm here to volunteer. Tutoring." She paused. "If you'll have me." Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. "We'd be honored." She nodded and walked toward a group of kids struggling with math homework. Within minutes, she was explaining fractions with the patience of someone who genuinely cared. More volunteers arrived, Sharon Carter bringing snacks she'd made after her night shift, a teacher from Jefferson offering to run a reading group, even a few parents who'd been skeptical at the town hall here to see if this thing was real. By late afternoon, Courage Place was alive with noise. Kids laughing, arguing, creating, being. Marcus found himself in the corner watching David teach coding to a small group. His son's face was animated, excited. He was explaining something about loops and variables, and the other kids disabled and not were listening intently. "He's good at this," Jasmine said, appearing beside Marcus. "He is. You know what's different about him now?" Marcus looked at her. "What?" "He's not hiding anymore. He's not trying to be invisible. He's just David." Jasmine smiled. "That's what this place does. It lets kids be themselves." Across the room, something caught Marcus's attention. The buzz-cut kid, the one who'd bullied David, stood in the doorway. Uncertain, scared even. David saw him too. For a moment, they locked eyes. Then David wheeled over. "You here to cause trouble?" Buzzcut shuffled his feet. "No. My mom made me come. Said I had to apologize." "Did she?" David's voice was flat. "Yeah." The kid couldn't meet David's eyes. "Look, I'm sorry for everything. I was a jerk." David studied him. Then, "What's your name, your real name?" "Tyler." "Tyler." David nodded. "You were a jerk. You hurt me. A lot." Tyler flinched. "But Jasmine taught me something," David continued. "She said kids who hurt others are usually hurting themselves." "Is that true? Are you hurting?" Tyler's jaw tightened, then barely audible. "My dad hits me when I mess up, when he's drunk, whenever." The words hung in the air. David was quiet for a long moment. Then, "That doesn't make what you did okay, but it explains it." He gestured to the room. "This place helps kids who are hurting. All kids, even bullies. You want help?" Tyler looked around, at the other kids, at the volunteers, at this space that somehow felt safe. "I don't know. Maybe." "Then stay," David said simply. "Stay and figure it out." Marcus watched Tyler nod and slowly walk toward a couch where other kids were hanging out. He sat on the edge, still uncertain, but present. Jasmine appeared beside Marcus again. "Did you see that?" "I did. That's what courage looks like. Forgiving someone who hurt you. Offering help to someone who doesn't deserve it." She looked up at Marcus. "Your son gets it now." Marcus's eyes burned. "He learned it from you." "No." Jasmine shook her head. "He learned it from seeing you change, from watching you fail and keep trying, from seeing that people can be better than their worst moments." A crash from the art corner. Someone had knocked over paint. Instead of panic, there was laughter. Kids grabbed paper towels and turned the cleanup into a game. "Mr. Wellington," a reporter appeared with a cameraman. "Channel 5 News. Can we get a statement about Courage Place?" Marcus opened his mouth, then stopped. He looked at David and Jasmine. "Talk to them. They're the directors here." "But you're funding this," the reporter pressed. "Our viewers want to hear from you." "Then they're asking the wrong person." Marcus gestured to David and Jasmine. "These two built this. They run it. They're the story, not me." The reporter hesitated, then turned to David and Jasmine. All right, can you tell us about Courage Place? David and Jasmine exchanged a glance. Then Jasmine spoke. This is a place for kids who don't fit in, kids who are different, kids who need somewhere they belong. We're not fixing kids, David added. We're giving them space to be themselves, to be strong, to find courage they didn't know they had. And what about the bullying issue, the reporter asked. This started because of bullying, right? It started because someone saw wrong and did something about it, Jasmine said. Now we're all doing something about it, together. The reporter asked more questions, but Marcus stopped listening. He watched the room, the kids, the volunteers, the messy, imperfect, beautiful chaos of it all. This wasn't what he'd imagined 3 months ago. It was better, realer, more alive. Sharon Carter approached him. You're not doing interviews. This isn't about me. No, Sharon agreed. It's not, but it started with you, with your failure and your willingness to admit it. That took courage too. Marcus shook his head. Jasmine was brave. David was brave. I just finally stopped being a coward. Sometimes that's the same thing. Sharon looked at the room. My daughter's different since this started. Prouder, more confident. You gave her a platform to use her courage. That matters. She gave me a reason to change. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the scene unfold. As evening approached, families started arriving to pick up kids. Parents who'd been skeptical looked around with cautious approval. Kids who'd arrived quiet and withdrawn left laughing and talking. Tyler, the buzzcut kid, left with his mother. He glanced back at David once. David nodded. Tyler almost smiled. Finally, as the last family left, only Marcus, David, Jasmine, and Sharon remained. First day success, Jasmine said, flopping onto a couch. Barely, David laughed. Did you see the paint disaster? Or when the computer crashed during the coding class? Or when Mrs. Johnson's fractions explanation turned into a debate about pizza slicing? They laughed. Real laughter. The kind that comes from shared effort and genuine connection. Marcus sat beside David. You two did something incredible today. We all did, David corrected. The community did. The volunteers did. Even Tyler showed up and tried. But this, Marcus gestured to the space. This is your vision. Both of you. Jasmine stood up. Mom, we should go. I have homework. As they headed for the door, Jasmine turned back. Mr. Wellington, thank you for listening, for learning, for not making this about you. Thank you for teaching me how. After they left, Marcus and David sat in the quiet warehouse. The afternoon light faded through the high windows. Dad. Yeah, I'm glad you froze that day, when I was being bullied. Marcus looked at his son confused. If you'd saved me, David continued, nothing would have changed. You'd still be the absent father. I'd still be the lonely kid. We'd still be broken. He met Marcus's eyes. But you froze, and Jasmine saved me. And that broke you open enough to finally change. Marcus's vision blurred. I'm sorry I had to break to finally show up for you. I'm not. David's hand found his father's. Because now you're really here. Not just physically. Actually here. Present. That's all I ever wanted. They sat holding hands in the warehouse they'd built together. Well, that David and Jasmine had built while Marcus learned to step back in support instead of control. This is just the beginning, isn't it? Marcus asked. Yeah. We'll probably mess up a lot, make mistakes, have setbacks. Probably. But we'll keep trying. Keep showing up. Keep building. David squeezed his father's hand. Together. Marcus looked around Courage Place. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fancy. But it was real. Built on failure and redemption. On courage learned from a 13-year-old girl. On love slowly and perfectly rebuilt between a father and son. Outside, the South Atlanta sun set over the neighborhood. Kids who'd found refuge here today would return tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Not because a billionaire funded it, but because two brave kids had shown everyone, Marcus included, what really mattered. Presence, purpose, courage. And in this converted warehouse with its hand-painted sign, those values would bloom. One child at a time. 6 months after opening day, Marcus sat in his office at Wellington Tech. His assistant had scheduled 3 back-to-back interviews, Forbes, TechCrunch, and the Wall Street Journal, all wanting to talk about Courage Place, all wanting to make him the story. His phone buzzed. A text from David. Don't forget you promised to help with the coding workshop at 4 p.m. We need you to set up the computers. Marcus smiled. Not to lead the workshop, not to give a speech, to set up computers, to be support, not the star. He texted back, I'll be there at 3:30, a knock on his door. His assistant poked her head in. "Mr. Wellington, the Forbes reporter is here early. Send her in." A woman in her 30s entered, recorder in hand. "Mr. Wellington, thank you for your time. I'm Rachel Chen from Forbes. We're doing a feature on Courage Place, how one billionaire's personal tragedy became a movement for change." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "That's not the right angle." Rachel sat down, confused. "I'm sorry. Courage Place isn't about me. It's not about my personal tragedy or my redemption story." Marcus leaned forward. "If you want to write about Courage Place, you need to interview David Wellington and Jasmine Carter. They're the co-directors. They built it. They run it." "Yes, but you're funding it. You're the one who—" "I write checks," Marcus interrupted. "That's all. David and Jasmine do everything that matters. They decide programming. They hire staff. They work with the kids. I just show up when they need me to carry heavy things or fix computers." Rachel's pen hovered over her notepad. "But surely you have input, vision, direction." "I did it first. They told me to stop." Marcus smiled at the memory. "Jasmine said, 'Mr. Wellington, you're trying to control everything again. This isn't your company. Let us lead.' She was right." "So you have no involvement?" "I didn't say that. I'm involved. I volunteer 3 afternoons a week. I help with fundraising when they ask. I listen when they need advice. But I'm not the leader. I'm not the visionary. I'm just a dad who's learning to show up." Rachel studied him. "That's not much of a story for Forbes." Then maybe Forbes is covering the wrong story." Marcus stood and walked to his window. "You want a story? Talk to the 15-year-old girl who was being bullied for her weight and now runs a body positivity workshop at Courage Place. Talk to the kid with autism who found friends for the first time in his life. Talk to the former bully who's now a peer counselor helping other angry kids." He turned back to Rachel. "Or talk to my son. Talk to David about what it's like to be disabled in a world that treats you as less than. About what it means to find your voice. About building something that actually helps people instead of just making money." Rachel was writing now. Fast. "Can you set up those interviews? I can give you their contact information, but you'll have to convince them yourself. I don't speak for them." Rachel left 20 minutes later with a list of names and a completely different story than she'd come to write. The next interview went similarly, and the one after that. By the end of the day, Marcus had redirected 3 major publications away from himself and toward the people who actually mattered. At 3:30 p.m., Marcus arrived at Courage Place. The warehouse was buzzing with activity. Kids everywhere doing homework, playing basketball, creating art, talking in groups. He found David in the computer lab looking frustrated. "The network's down again," David said. "Can you look at it?" Marcus spent the next 30 minutes on his hands and knees under a desk rewiring the router. Not glamorous, not newsworthy, just necessary. When he emerged covered in dust, Jasmine was standing there with her arms crossed. "Mr. Wellington, we need to talk." His heart sank. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. But we got 3 calls from reporters today. All of them said you sent them." "I did. They wanted to interview me. I told them to interview you instead." Jasmine and David exchanged a glance. "Dad," David said carefully, "we appreciate that, but we need to talk about something." They led him to the small office in the back, really just a converted storage closet with a desk and 3 chairs. Jasmine closed the door. "Mr. Wellington, you're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Controlling the narrative, deciding what the story should be, redirecting reporters without asking us first." Jasmine sat down. "We appreciate what you're trying to do, but we can speak for ourselves. We don't need you to protect us." Marcus felt like he'd been slapped. "I wasn't trying to protect you. I was trying to make sure you got credit." "We know," David said, "but that's still you deciding what's best for us, making choices about our story without including us in the decision." Marcus sat down heavily. "You're right. I'm sorry. I thought I was helping, but I was just being a dad," Jasmine finished. "A protective dad who wants the best for his kid. We get it. But David and I are partners in this, equals. Sometimes that means letting us handle things ourselves, even the hard things. Even the media, especially the media." David leaned forward. "Dad, do you know what reporters ask me when they call?" Marcus shook his head. "They ask about you, about your money, about your guilt and redemption. They want the billionaire's journey, not mine." David's voice was firm, but not angry. "So when you redirect them to us, you're giving us a gift, but you're also taking away our chance to redirect them ourselves, to stand up and say, 'No, this story is about the kids, not about money or guilt or any adult's journey. Marcus absorbed this. I never thought about it that way. We know. Jasmine's expression softened. You're learning. We all are. But part of you stepping back means really stepping back, trusting us to handle things, even when it's scary, even when you think you could do it better, or faster, or safer. What if you need help? Then we'll ask, David said, like we asked you to fix the computers today. But let us ask. Don't assume we need you to swoop in and save us. Marcus looked at his son, at the confident, articulate young man he'd become, at Jasmine, who'd taught them both what courage meant. They didn't need saving. They never had. You're absolutely right, Marcus said quietly. Both of you. I'll back off. For real this time. We don't want you to disappear, Jasmine clarified. We want you here, present, supportive, but not in charge, not making decisions for us. I can do that. Marcus paused. I think. I'll probably mess up sometimes. We know, David smiled. That's okay. We mess up too. That's why we have each other to call out the mistakes and keep trying. A knock on the door. Sharon Carter stuck her head in. Sorry to interrupt. Jasmine, there's a girl here asking for you. Says she's being bullied at her school and heard about Courage Place online. Jasmine stood immediately. I'll be right there. As she left, David started to follow, then paused. Dad, thanks for trying, for learning, even when we have to correct you. That's what you're supposed to do. Keep me honest. Marcus stood. Now go. That girl needs you, not me. David rolled out, and Marcus was alone in the tiny office. He could hear voices in the main room. Jasmine talking softly to the new girl. David joining the conversation. The sounds of healing beginning. Marcus walked out and stayed in the background, watched as his son and Jasmine did what they did best. Listened, cared, helped. A few kids waved at him. He waved back. One asked for help reaching a book on a high shelf. He got it down. Another needed a ride home because their parent was working late. He drove them. Small things, unglamorous things, the things that actually mattered. That evening, as Courage Place closed for the night, Marcus helped fold up chairs and sweep floors. Janitor work, he didn't mind. Patricia Johnson was one of the last to leave. She'd been volunteering 4 days a week now, tutoring kids in math. Mr. Wellington, she said as she gathered her things. Can I tell you something? Of course. 6 months ago, I thought you were full of it. Thought this was a publicity stunt that would disappear in a month. Marcus nodded. You weren't wrong to think that. But I was wrong about you. Patricia shouldered her bag. You actually meant it. You actually changed. That's rare. Most people talk about change. Few actually do it. I had good teachers. Marcus gestured to where David and Jasmine were laughing about something. They wouldn't let me fail. No. Patricia's voice was firm. They gave you guidance, but you did the work. You showed up. You listened. You stepped back when you needed to. That was all you... Marcus felt unexpected emotion rise in his throat. Thank you. Patricia nodded and left. Soon, only Marcus, David, and Jasmine remained. Long day, Jasmine said, stretching. Good day, though, David added. Did you see how many kids showed up? We're going to need more space soon. Already looking at options, Jasmine said. There's another warehouse 2 blocks over. Bigger. We could expand programming. They talked logistics for a while. Marcus listened, offering input only when asked. Finally, Sharon arrived to pick up Jasmine. Ready, baby. Almost. Jasmine turned to Marcus and David. Same time tomorrow. Same time, David confirmed. As they left, Marcus locked up while David waited by the car. Dad, David said as Marcus helped him into the passenger seat. Yeah, I'm proud of what we built here. Not just the place, but us. You and me. We're actually a team now. Marcus's hands paused on the wheelchair as he folded it. We are, aren't we? Yeah, David smiled. Took us long enough. They drove home through South Atlanta, past houses that used to look foreign to Marcus but now felt familiar. Past the street where Jasmine lived, past the lives he'd once ignored. You think we're making a difference? Marcus asked. I know we are. I see it every day. David looked out the window. But the biggest difference isn't in Courage Place, Dad. No, it's in you, in us. In the fact that 6 months ago, we could barely talk to each other, and now we're partners. That's the real miracle. Marcus pulled into their driveway, helped David with his wheelchair. Together they went inside, not to separate corners of the house, but to the kitchen, where they'd make dinner together, probably burn something, definitely make a mess. But they'd be together, present, real, And that was worth more than every dollar Marcus had ever made. That night, lying in bed, Marcus thought about the Forbes article that would never be written, the Wall Street Journal piece that would focus on David and Jasmine instead of him, the story he had desperately wanted to control but had finally learned to let go. His phone buzzed. An email from Rachel Chen at Forbes. Mr. Wellington just finished interviews with David, Jasmine, and 5 kids from Courage Place. This is the best story I've written in years. Thank you for pointing me in the right direction. The real heroes were right there all along. Marcus smiled in the darkness. The real heroes were right there all along. Yes, they were. And for once, Marcus was exactly where he needed to be, not in the spotlight, not leading the charge, but standing beside them, supporting them, learning from them, being the father his son deserved, being the person Jasmine's courage had inspired him to become. Not perfect, not without mistakes, but present, trying, growing. And in the end, that was all any of them could do. Show up, love fiercely, and let the real heroes shine.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.